for having me today, and thank you for having me in this really interesting project. To start, my name is Roxana Coman. I'm a curator at the Bucharest Municipality Museum. And in terms of my relationship with textile, I think I can start with my uh, in research interests so far. So I both my BAs and MAs were focused on Oriental themes in modern Romanian art, namely the work of two very interesting artists, Carol Pop de Satmari and Teodor Aman. And in terms of my PhD, I wanted to understand these perceptions about the Oriental and more specifically the Ottoman Empire in a broader context. So I kind of I looked beyond the artistic production and looked at the political discourses, literature, Romania's participation in various international exhibitions, namely the ones in Paris, because the second half of the 19th century was marked by mm, an obsession with everything that was French. We still have it, unfortunately. And in terms of my relationship with textiles so far, was that one thing that I noticed and it kept coming back repeatedly in terms of Oriental depictions was the fact that these stereotypical Oriental representations in Romanian modern art relied heavily on costume, on depicting Oriental or Arab or Ottoman characters and attempting to individualize them through costume. Also, a very interesting and important aspect relating to this phenomenon in Romanian modern art was the fact that most of the Romanian artists who chose to depict this stereotypical Oriental themes also were collectors of textiles, either costumes or carpets or other types of Oriental quotation required textiles that were either found in, let's just say, the familiar Ottoman heritage from the principalities' Ottoman pasts, or they were bought in their times spent educating themselves either in Paris or in Munich. So, and these textiles were repeatedly used in a number of artworks. So they didn't care about authenticity, but more about conveying a certain sentiment using Oriental props. It didn't matter the provenance, the actual dating, or the actual area they represented. They were Oriental, and that was the end of it. So, in order to better understand this Orientalist approach in the second half of the 19th century in Romania, I began after my PhD to turn to the 18th century. I did so in a very non-formal way. Uh, I began teaching some courses at the foundation about the Fanariot age. And of course, when it comes to the Fanariot regime, there in Romanian historiography and Romanian studies about the period, you kind of get a polarized view. You either see it as an exotic period that was really hedonistic and filled with beautiful clothes and jewelry and parties and so on, or you either get the reverse perspective as being the worst period of the Ottoman dominance regarding the political regime of both Wallachia and Moldavia. So I wanted to kind of challenge this perspective and go beyond the let's just say this amateuristic stage, because it was a very amateuristic stage. And I went and looked, for instance, at Tudor Vladimirescu, because this year, 2021, is the 200 years of anniversary of the 1821 movement. So in Romania, in Romanian historiography, this particular year and the figure of Tudor Vladimirescu has a very important significance as being a national builder and pioneer in terms of national identity. But then when I went back and looked at his portraits and analyzed, for instance, the clothing he was portrayed as wearing, well, those specific clothes marked him as a member of the Fanario regime, as a man of the system. He, even in portraits that were made 50 years after the event, after 1821, he still is featured using various Ottoman types of clothing or various items of Ottoman material culture. Of course, clothes and other types of artifacts, to my mind, are products and their presence in various former provinces of the Ottoman Empire are products of an acculturation process. So not only did we import and accept and felt the need to belong and to be integrated in the Ottoman administration and world by wearing specific type of clothing, or by adopting various customs, or by leading a certain type of lifestyle. But also the Istanbul was like a melting pot of various influences. So I think that the textiles that usually date, mm, to my mind, from the 17th century to the beginning of the 19th century are Ottoman, in the sense that they integrate and use various types of local traditions, Byzantine traditions, and of course Islamic traditions. So you get something that it's the product of a mixed heritage, of mixed components, and that's something that I would like to take a more in-depth at them. And I would also like to challenge the idea that the Ottomanization in clothing, especially the elite clothing, was restricted to, I don't know, let's say the end of the 17th century and the 18th century, because kaftans, for instance, were used beginning with the 15th century. In this example from the National Museum of Art of Romania, this item dates back to the end of the 15th century. In a future workshop, namely next month, I'm trying to look at the gifts that were exchanged and endowed to the princes and voivodes of Wallachia and Moldavia in the 18th century, namely the Phanariot ones. And of course, one of the big and most important items that were exchanged between the Sultan and the voivodes is the kaftan. Kaftan is it's like the epitome of power transfers between the Sultan and his representative, whether he was a member of the Divan in Istanbul, or he was a governor or one of the voivodes and local governors of other provinces of the Ottoman Empire. My focus is not only on costumes, but I think that domestic textiles are a big part of Ottoman material culture and Ottoman textiles, and in terms of identity, and as I said before, in terms of belonging and leading a certain lifestyle that was, of course, part of the Ottoman zeitgeist, for instance. So, in an integrated project of mine dedicated to Ottoman architecture and in Wallachia and Moldavia, I began looking at to what extent can we totally speak about certain Ottoman influence in the matters of residential architecture? And a big factor in this discussion is, of course, the in terms of interior decoration and the material culture that was used, metalworking, textiles, especially metalworking and textiles, because in many of the acts of sale of houses between various types of owners. There's a small inventory of the house. The focus is not on how the house looks like, but what the house has, namely various types of textile, various types of doors, various types of furniture, and so on. In terms of what I would like to explore in this Euroweb cost action, I would like to go beyond the issue of social status as it was represented by various types of textiles and various type of costumes that were used by the members of the high society in both Wallachia and Moldavia, but also look at domestic textiles because they are even more important. The status wasn't limited to how someone appeared in the streets, but more in the Ottoman war. But the status was even more important, outlined by how their house looked and how it was furnished. So I would also like to attempt to take a closer look at various workshops that could have provided these textiles and how they came to be in the remaining countries, find various other connections with items or artifacts that are present in either Turkish or Greek museum collections, but because the Greek influence was a very important factor and mediator when it came to Ottoman material culture, because the fanariots were some of them of Greek origin, and they served in the Ottoman high administration before they were named as local rulers to either Wallachia or Moldavia. And because I'm a very curious nature, I always like to find connections between various types of artifacts on either decorative level or in the context of their use and their perception and so on. So thank you. This is my email address, my full name, if you ever want to get in touch.